The blood-red sunset painted the Arizona sky as Martha Forster stepped down from the dusty stagecoach. Her shoulders weighed by more than just the small leather bag clutched in her trembling hands. Wickenburg wasn't much to look at, a scattering of weathered buildings along a main street that seemed to sigh with the weight of desert heat and broken dreams, but it was as good a place as any to disappear. It was 1873, and the West still promised something that the East couldn't offer: anonymity. Martha had spent her last dollars on the journey from Boston, fleeing whispers that followed her like vultures after the doctor's devastating news and her fiancé's subsequent abandonment. "First time in Wickenburg, madam." The driver handed down her trunk, his leathery face creased with curiosity. "Yes." Martha brushed dust from her navy traveling dress. "Is there a boarding house for respectable women?" The driver nodded toward a whitewashed two-story building. "Mrs. Peterson's. Tell her Barney sent you. She's partial to hard luck cases." Martha bristled. "I'm not a charity case." "Didn't say you were." He tipped his hat. "But you got that look about you, like you're running from something fierce." Martha squared her shoulders. At 26, she'd faced enough sorrow to last several lifetimes. "The only thing I'm running from is boredom, sir. Now, if you'll excuse me." She dragged her trunk across the dusty street, ignoring the stares of men lounging outside the saloon. Mrs. Peterson's boarding house smelled of lye soap and cinnamon, its sparse furnishings gleaming with polish. The widow who ran it, a sharp-eyed woman with steel-gray hair, looked Martha up and down before naming her price. "I can pay for a week," Martha said, counting out precious coins. "I'll need employment. I can teach so or keep books." Mrs. Peterson's eyebrows rose. "Educated, are you?" "The mine office might need help, or the schoolhouse teacher left 2 weeks back after Indians spooked her." "I'm not easily spooked," Martha replied, though her heart quickened. The newspapers back east were full of frontier violence, though she suspected much was exaggerated. "We'll see, Mrs. Peterson said cryptically. "Rooms at the top of the stairs. Suppers at 6. Martha found herself in a clean but Spartan room with a narrow bed, washstand, and small window overlooking the main street. She unpacked her few belongings: 2 dresses, undergarments, a hairbrush, and her mother's Bible. From a hidden pocket, she withdrew a letter from Dr. Warren, its clinical words seared into her memory. "Internal damage from childhood fever, unlikely to ever bear children." The words that had made Edmund break their engagement without a backward glance. Martha tucked the letter away, refusing to let tears come. She hadn't cried since the stagecoach left Boston city limits. She wouldn't start now. At supper, she met the other boarders, 2 elderly sisters who worked at the mercantile, and a young widow who served as the town's midwife. The irony wasn't lost on Martha. "You'll want to meet the sheriff tomorrow," Mrs. Peterson advised as she passed a plate of biscuits. "Any newcomer should make themselves known. Town this size, secrets don't keep." Martha nodded, though she had every intention of keeping hers. The sheriff's office was a small adobe building next to the jailhouse. Martha approached it the next morning, her letter of introduction from her former employer in Boston clutched in her gloved hand. The door stood open to catch the morning breeze, and a man's booted feet were propped on the desk, crossed at the ankles. "Excuse me," she said, stepping into the cool dimness. "I'm looking for Sheriff." The feet swung down and the chair creaked as its occupant stood. Martha found herself looking up at a man whose height seemed impossible, well over 6 feet, with shoulders that nearly filled the doorway behind the desk. His face was tanned beneath a shock of sandy hair, and a neatly trimmed beard framed features that might have been carved from granite. "Not the sheriff, madam," he said, his voice a low rumble that matched his imposing presence. "He's out tracking rustlers. I'm his deputy, Adam Kavanaugh." Martha extended her hand automatically, then flushed as he enveloped it in his much larger one. Martha Forster. I arrived yesterday and was told I should make myself known to the authorities. Passing through. His eyes, a startling clear blue against his tan, assessed her with unnerving directness. No, I intend to stay. I'm seeking employment. I understand the school needs a teacher. Something flickered in those blue eyes. It does, though it ain't exactly what you might be used to back east. Martha stiffened. How do you know I'm from the east? A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Your accent, your clothes. The way you stand, like someone might steal your purse if you don't keep your back straight. Martha felt heat rise in her cheeks. I assure you, Deputy Kavanaugh, I'm quite capable of adapting to frontier life. I'm sure you are. He didn't sound convinced. The school board meets on Wednesdays at the church. You can plead your case then. I don't plead cases, sir. I present qualifications. Martha turned to leave, then paused. Is there anything else I should know about Wickenburg? Deputy Kavanaugh leaned against the desk, crossing his arms over his broad chest. Just that folks here value honesty above all. Whatever you're running from, it might catch up sooner than you think. Martha met his gaze steadily. I'm not running from anything. I'm running toward something. And what might that be? A new beginning. For a moment they stared at each other, an inexplicable current passing between them. Martha broke the connection first, nodding briskly. Good day, Deputy. She could feel his eyes on her back as she walked out into the sunlight. The schoolhouse stood on the edge of town, a squat adobe building with a sagging wooden door. Martha approached it cautiously, peering through grimy windows at the jumble of mismatched benches and tables inside. A blackboard hung crookedly on one wall, and a shelf of tattered books sat beneath it. Not much to look at, is it? Martha whirled to find Deputy Kavanaugh standing a few feet away, leading a dappled gray horse. I didn't hear you approach, she said accusingly. Force of habit. He patted the horse's neck. Thought you might want to see it before the meeting tomorrow. Martha frowned. Are you following me, Deputy? Just happened to be passing. His expression was unreadable. Town's not that big. Martha turned back to the schoolhouse. How many students? 15, give or take, ages 5 to 15. Miners' kids, ranchers' children, a few from the reservation who come when they're not needed at home. Reservation. Yavapai, peaceful enough these days, though there's always troublemakers. He studied her face. That gonna be a problem for you? Martha lifted her chin. I believe all children deserve education, regardless of race. Something like approval flickered in his eyes. Glad to hear it. Not everyone shares that view. Well, I'm not everyone. She turned to study the schoolhouse again. It needs cleaning. I reckon so. He shifted, seeming suddenly uncomfortable. Listen, Miss Forster, Wickenburg ain't Boston. Life's hard here. People can be harder. Martha met his gaze. I appreciate your concern, Deputy, but I've faced hardship before. I don't doubt it, just... He hesitated. Be careful who you trust. With that cryptic warning, he tipped his hat and mounted his horse, riding away before Martha could question him further. The next day, Martha stood before the school board, 5 stern-faced men, including the town mayor, the banker, and 3 prominent ranchers. She presented her credentials calmly, answering their questions about her teaching experience in Boston and her educational philosophy. Why Wickenburg? The banker asked bluntly. Seems an odd choice for an educated Eastern lady. Martha had prepared for this. My parents passed last year. I have no family remaining in Boston, and I wished for a complete change. The West seemed to offer opportunities not available back east. It wasn't entirely a lie, though it omitted the most painful truths. Can you shoot? One of the ranchers asked. Martha blinked. I beg your pardon. A gun, Miss Forster. Can you handle one? Last teacher we had couldn't, and first sign of trouble she high-tailed it out of here. I've never had occasion to learn, Martha admitted, but I'm willing to if necessary. The men exchanged glances. We'll pay $30 a month, the mayor said finally, plus room and board at Mrs. Peterson's. Term starts Monday next. Martha's heart leapt. It wasn't much, but it would keep her fed and housed. Thank you, gentlemen, I won't disappoint you. As she left the church, she nearly collided with Deputy Kavanaugh, who was leaning against a hitching post outside. Congratulations, schoolmarm, he said, straightening to his full height. Were you eavesdropping? Martha demanded. Didn't need to. I can read old Perkins' face like a book. He nodded toward the banker, who was exiting the church. He only looks that sour when he's been outvoted. Despite herself, Martha smiled. He did seem resistant. He wanted to bring in his niece from Phoenix. Adam fell into step beside her as she walked toward the boarding house. But the others knew you were better qualified. And how would they know that? Adam shrugged. Might have put in a good word. Martha stopped short. Why would you do that? You don't know me. Let's just say I'm a good judge of character. His eyes crinkled at the corners when he smiled, Martha noticed. Besides, those kids need someone who'll stick around longer than a month. And you think I will? I think you've got something to prove. He stopped outside Mrs. Peterson's gate. And that makes you dangerous. Dangerous. Martha laughed despite herself. I doubt anyone has ever described me that way. First time for everything. His gaze lingered on her face a moment too long. You need anything, Miss Forster. My door's always open. Martha watched him walk away, puzzled by the strange warmth his presence seemed to kindle. She pushed the feeling aside. She hadn't come to Wickenburg for romance, quite the opposite. She had come to build a life without the expectations of marriage and motherhood that had defined her existence in Boston. She had come to be free of the pity in men's eyes when they learned she couldn't have children. The schoolhouse transformation took Martha 3 days of scrubbing, sweeping, and organizing. Mrs. Peterson's boarders helped, along with several mothers of future students. By Saturday evening, the windows gleamed, the floors were swept, and the jumble of furniture had been arranged into orderly rows. Fresh chalk and a new slate had appeared mysteriously on the teacher's desk, along with a polished apple. Martha suspected Deputy Kavanaugh, though she hadn't seen him since their conversation outside the boarding house. Sunday morning found her in church, seated primly beside Mrs. Peterson as curious eyes assessed the new schoolteacher. The service was simple but earnest, the congregation's voices raised in hymns that echoed against the wooden ceiling. Martha sang along, finding comfort in the familiar rituals. After the service, she endured a barrage of introductions, mothers proudly presenting children who would be her students, fathers awkwardly tipping hats, and several unmarried men lingering a bit too long over her hand. Miss Forster. A deep voice cut through the crowd, and Martha looked up to see Deputy Kavanaugh approaching, a young girl at his side. The child couldn't have been more than 6, with the same striking blue eyes as Adam, though her hair was dark as a raven's wing. Deputy. Martha nodded, curious about the child. This here's Lily. His large hand rested gently on the girl's shoulder. My neighbor's daughter, she'll be in your class come tomorrow. The little girl ducked her head shyly. Hello, miss. Martha knelt to the child's level, smiling warmly. Hello, Lily, I'm very pleased to meet you. Do you like to read? The girl nodded vigorously. Pa's teaching me. I can spell my name and cat and dog. That's wonderful, you'll have to show me tomorrow. Martha glanced up at Adam. She seems quite bright. Smart as a whip, he agreed, his expression softening as he looked at the child. Her ma died last winter. Fever. Her pa works the mine, so she stays with me sometimes when he's on shift. Martha felt a pang of empathy for the motherless child. Well, I look forward to having you in class, Lily. The girl smiled, revealing a missing front tooth. Deputy Adam says you're from far away. Did you ride a train? Part of the way, Martha replied. And then a stage coach. Was there Indians? Lily's eyes widened. Lily, Adam admonished gently. Remember what we talked about. It's not polite to ask such things. It's quite all right, Martha assured him. No, Lily, I didn't encounter any Native Americans on my journey, though I understand some of your classmates are Yavapai. I'm looking forward to meeting them as well. Adam's expression changed, something like surprise flickering across his features. Mr. Peterson's looking for you, he said, nodding toward the churchyard where the mayor was indeed waving in their direction. Best not keep him waiting. He takes his position mighty serious. Martha rose, smoothing her skirts. Of course. It was lovely to meet you, Lily. I'll see you both tomorrow. As she walked away, she heard the little girl's piping voice. I like her, Deputy Adam. She's pretty. Martha couldn't hear his response, but she felt a flutter of something unfamiliar in her chest, a warmth that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. Monday morning arrived with a chorus of roosters and the distant clang of the mine's bell. Martha dressed carefully in her best teaching dress, a severe navy blue with white collar and cuffs, and pinned her hair in a neat bun. She wanted to make a good impression on her first day. The schoolhouse was already buzzing when she arrived, children of various ages milling about the yard. They fell silent as she approached, 15 pairs of curious eyes following her progress to the door. Martha summoned her most confident smile. Good morning, she called. I'm Miss Forster, your new teacher. Shall we begin? The children filed in, finding seats with minimal fuss. Martha noted the mix as Adam had described. There were miners' children in patched clothing, a few better-dressed youngsters from merchant families, and 3 solemn-faced Yavapai children who sat together at the back. Lily waved enthusiastically from a front bench. Welcome, Martha said, surveying her new charges. I'm very pleased to meet all of you. We'll begin by introducing ourselves. I'd like each of you to stand, tell me your name, your age, and something you enjoy doing. The morning passed in a flurry of assessments and organization. Martha quickly discovered that education levels varied wildly. Some children could read complex texts, while others struggled with basic letters. By lunchtime, she had divided them into 3 groups based on ability rather than age, a system that seemed to make more sense given the circumstances. As the children spilled outside to eat their packed lunches, Martha sank into her chair, suddenly exhausted. She unwrapped the bread and cheese Mrs. Peterson had prepared for her, only to look up at a soft knock on the open door. Deputy Kavanaugh stood in the doorway, hat in hand. Thought I'd check in, see how your first morning went. Martha gestured for him to enter. It went well, I think. They're a diverse group. That they are. He glanced at the 3 groups she'd indicated on the blackboard, smart dividing them by ability. It seemed practical. Martha took a bite of bread. The Yavapai children speak remarkable English. Mission school, Adam explained, leaning against a desk. They go there during winter months. Summer and fall they come here when they can. He hesitated. Some folks don't like it. Having them mixed in with white children, Martha frowned. Those folks are welcome to start their own school then. In mine, all children will be treated equally. A smile spread slowly across Adam's face. I had you figured right. Oh, and what exactly did you figure, Deputy? That you've got more spine than most men in this town. He straightened, settling his hat back on his head. Just wanted to make sure you were settling in all right. Sheriff's back tomorrow, so I'll be riding patrol more often. Martha wasn't sure why this news disappointed her. Thank you for checking in. It was thoughtful. He nodded once, then turned to leave, pausing at the door. Those groups you made, they make sense, but you might want to mix them up now and then. Let the stronger readers help the weaker ones, builds community." With that, he was gone, leaving Martha to stare thoughtfully after him. The man was an enigma, a frontier lawman with the insight of an educator. She wondered what his story was and why he seemed so invested in her success. The weeks passed in a blur of lessons, grading, and gradual integration into Wickenburg society. Martha found herself invited to Sunday dinners, ladies' sewing circles, and the occasional community dance. She declined the latter, not wishing to encourage suitors. Several of the town's unmarried men had already made their interest clear, despite her cool responses. Deputy Kavanaugh remained a constant, if peripheral, presence. He would appear at the schoolhouse occasionally, sometimes with Lily in tow, other times alone. His visits were always brief, ostensibly to check on safety or deliver messages, but Martha found herself looking forward to them more than she cared to admit. One afternoon in late October, as autumn painted the desert in subtle golds and ambers, Martha dismissed her students early to attend the funeral of an elderly miner. She remained behind, using the quiet time to grade composition papers. The scratching of her pen was the only sound in the still classroom. A shadow fell across her desk, and Martha looked up, expecting one of her students returning for a forgotten item. Instead, she found herself staring at a man she didn't recognize, tall and rail-thin, with a pockmarked face and alcohol on his breath. "School's out," she said calmly, though her heart had begun to race. "Is there something I can help you with?" The man leaned on her desk, his yellowed teeth bared in what might have been intended as a smile. "Heard we got ourselves a pretty new school, marm. Didn't believe it till now." Martha stood, putting the desk between them. "Sir, I must ask you to leave. School property is closed to visitors after hours." He laughed, a harsh sound that raised the hairs on Martha's arms. "Ain't no visitor, lady. My boy comes here, Tommy Ellis. Says you been filling his head with all sorts of nonsense about readin' poetry and such. Mr. Ellis." Martha recognized the name. Tommy was one of her brightest students, a quiet 11-year-old with a gift for language. "Your son is very talented. He has a natural affinity for don't need affinity," Ellis spat. "Needs to learn figures so he can work the mind proper when he's 13. Don't need poetry for that." Martha straightened her spine. "I believe all children benefit from a well-rounded education, Mr. Ellis. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have work to finish." She began gathering her papers, hoping he would take the hint. Instead, Ellis circled the desk, closing the distance between them with alarming speed. Martha backed away until she felt the blackboard against her shoulders. "Think you're better'n us, don't you?" His breath was hot on her face. "Coming out here with your fancy Boston ways, looking down on working folk." "That's not true," Martha said, her voice remarkably steady despite her fear. "I respect honest work of all kinds. I simply believe your son deserves choices." Ellis's hand shot out, gripping her wrist painfully. "Women don't get to decide what my boy deserves. Let go of me." Martha tried to pull away, but his grip tightened. "Make me," he sneered. The click of a revolver being cocked froze them both. "I believe the lady asked you to let go." Adam Kavanaugh's voice was colder than Martha had ever heard it, all trace of gentle humor gone. He stood in the doorway, his revolver pointed steadily at Ellis. "This ain't your business, Deputy," Ellis growled, though his grip loosened slightly. "A man manhandling a woman in my jurisdiction is definitely my business." Adam stepped into the room, his eyes never leaving Ellis. "Now, you're going to step away from Miss Forster, real slow, and then you're going to apologize." For a moment, Martha thought Ellis might resist. Then, muttering a curse, he released her wrist and stepped back, "Sorry," he mumbled, not looking at either of them. "Not good enough," Adam said quietly. "Look her in the eye and say it proper." Ellis raised bloodshot eyes to Martha's face. "I apologize, miss." Adam nodded once. "Now get out. And if I ever hear you've spoken to Miss Forster in anything less than a respectful tone, you'll be looking for work somewhere other than Wickenburg. Clear." Ellis slunk out, throwing one venomous glance over his shoulder before disappearing. The moment he was gone, Adam holstered his weapon and crossed the room in 3 long strides. "Are you hurt?" Martha rubbed her wrist, which was already bruising. "No, just shaken." She attempted a smile that faltered. "Your timing is impeccable, Deputy." Saw him heading this way, didn't like the look of him. Adam gently took her wrist, examining the marks with a frown. "This needs cold water. Come on." Before Martha could protest, he was leading her outside to the pump, his hand warm at the small of her back. He worked the handle until cold water gushed forth, then carefully held her wrist beneath the stream. The cool water was soothing against her heated skin. "Thank you," Martha said quietly. "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't arrived." Adam's jaw tightened. "I do. Which is why I'm going to walk you to and from school for a while." "That's not necessary, it is." His tone brooked no argument. "Ellis has a reputation. Mean drunk, meaner sober." He released her wrist, his fingers lingering a moment longer than necessary. "You should have this looked at, Mrs. Timmons knows about such things." Martha shook her head. "It's just a bruise, I've had worse." She regretted the words as soon as they left her mouth. Adam's eyes sharpened. "Have you now?" Martha turned away, uncomfortable under his scrutiny. "Everyone has accidents, Deputy." "Most accidents don't leave finger-shaped bruises." He stepped closer, his voice dropping. "Martha, if someone hurt you back east, no," she said quickly. "Nothing like that. I simply meant I'm not a fragile flower." Adam studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "All right. But I'm still walking you home." The walk to Mrs. Peterson's boarding house was quiet, the tension of the schoolhouse incident gradually fading as they moved through the late afternoon sunshine. Martha found herself sneaking glances at her companion, noting the way the light caught in his beard and the easy grace with which he moved despite his size. "Tommy Ellis really does have a gift," she said finally, breaking the silence. "It seems a shame to waste it in the mines." Adam sighed. "Not everyone gets to follow their gifts out here, Martha. Life's too hard, margins too thin. But it doesn't have to be that way. Education can open doors. For some." He glanced down at her. "You really believe that, don't you, that you can change things?" "I have to," Martha replied simply. "Otherwise, what's the point?" They had reached the boarding house gate. Adam stopped, turning to face her fully. "You're different than I expected," he said quietly. "Oh, what did you expect? Someone who'd leave at the first sign of trouble." His eyes were intensely blue in the fading light. "But you've got grit, Martha Forster, more than most men I know." The compliment warmed her in unexpected ways. "Thank you for your assistance today and for understanding about Tommy. I understand more than you might think." He hesitated, then added, "I wanted to be a doctor once." "Before the war," Martha blinked, surprised by this personal revelation. "What happened?" A shadow crossed his face. "Life, death, the usual." He stepped back, touching the brim of his hat. "Good evening, Miss Forster. I'll see you in the morning." Martha watched him walk away, a new understanding dawning. Perhaps Deputy Kavanaugh had his own share of deferred dreams and secret sorrows. Perhaps they weren't so different after all. November brought cooler temperatures and preparations for Thanksgiving. The school would host a celebration for families, and Martha threw herself into planning, partly to keep busy, partly to avoid thinking about holidays spent alone. Adam continued his self-appointed duty as her escort, though Ellis had made no further appearances. Their morning and afternoon walks had become a comfortable routine, filled with easy conversation about students, town gossip, and occasionally, deeper subjects. Martha learned that Adam had fought for the Union, that he had a younger brother in California, that he could quote Shakespeare from memory. In turn, she shared stories of Boston, her love of literature, and carefully edited accounts of her childhood. She never mentioned Dr. Warren's diagnosis or Edmund's rejection. Some wounds were still too raw to expose. A week before Thanksgiving, a blinding dust storm swept through Wickenburg, forcing Martha to dismiss school early. Adam appeared at the schoolhouse door as the last student departed, his bandana pulled up over his nose and mouth. "Storm's getting worse," he called over the howling wind. "Best get you home quick." Martha nodded, wrapping her shawl tightly around her shoulders and gathering her papers. They set out into the maelstrom, Adam's arm around her shoulders to anchor her against the gusting wind. The dust was so thick she could barely see 3 feet ahead. "Can't make it to the boarding house," Adam shouted after they'd struggled half a block. "My cabin's closer. This way." Martha had no choice but to trust him, allowing herself to be guided through the blinding dust. After what seemed an eternity, a dark shape loomed before them, a small cabin on the edge of town. Adam fumbled with the door, finally pushing it open and ushering Martha inside. The sudden absence of wind was startling. Martha stood in the center of the room, catching her breath as Adam secured the door against the storm. Dust coated her clothing, her hair, her eyelashes. She blinked rapidly, trying to clear her vision. "Here." Adam handed her a clean handkerchief. "For your eyes." Martha dabbed at her face, gradually becoming aware of her surroundings. The cabin was small but meticulously neat. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, currently cold. A narrow bed stood in one corner, a table and 2 chairs in another. Bookshelves lined the remaining wall space, stuffed with volumes that surprised her with their variety. "I didn't expect so many books," she said, her voice hoarse from the dust. Adam moved to the fireplace, kneeling to arrange kindling. "Man's got to have something to occupy his mind on long winter nights." Martha moved closer to the shelves, examining titles. Medical texts sat alongside novels, poetry, and history. "These are quite advanced. Like I said, I had other plans once." He struck a match, and the kindling caught with a crackling sound. "Storm might last a while. Best make yourself comfortable." Only then did Martha fully comprehend the impropriety of their situation. She was alone in a man's cabin, with no chaperone and no likelihood of leaving soon. Her reputation could be ruined. Adam seemed to read her thoughts. "Nobody'll think anything of it," he assured her, straightening. "Dust storms trap folks all the time. Besides, you're with the deputy. Can't get more respectable than that." Despite his reassurance, Martha remained standing stiffly by the bookshelf. "Perhaps we should leave the door unlatched in case anyone comes looking." Adam's mouth quirked. "And let half the desert blow in. Nobody's coming looking in this weather, Martha, but if it makes you feel better." He moved a chair to position it directly across the room from the bed. "I'll sit here, you take the bed, proper as church." Martha relaxed slightly. "Thank you. I don't mean to be difficult, it's just, you've got your reputation to consider, I understand." He busied himself building up the fire. "You hungry? Got some stew left from yesterday." The mention of food reminded Martha how long it had been since breakfast. "That would be lovely, thank you." As Adam moved around the small space, warming the stew and setting out bowls, Martha found herself watching him with new interest. In the confines of the cabin, his size was even more apparent, yet he moved with a controlled grace that belied his bulk. His hands, so large they made the spoon look like a toy, were surprisingly deft. "Here you are." He handed her a steaming bowl and a spoon. Nothing fancy, but it'll fill the hollow spots. They ate in companionable silence, the only sounds the howling wind outside and the crackling fire. Martha found herself surprisingly comfortable, the initial awkwardness fading as the warmth of the cabin and the satisfaction of the simple meal worked their magic. "May I ask you something, Adam?" she said finally, setting her empty bowl aside. "You can ask. Can't promise I'll answer." His eyes crinkled at the corners. "Why did you become a lawman instead of a doctor?" The amusement faded from his expression. "That's a long story. We seem to have time." Martha nodded toward the windows, where dust still swirled in the gathering dusk. Adam was silent for so long Martha thought he wouldn't answer. Then he sighed, setting his own bowl aside. "I was studying medicine in Philadelphia when the war broke out. Joined up right away, figured my training would be useful. Ended up as a field surgeon's assistant." His eyes took on a faraway look. Saw things no man should see. Did things no man should have to do. Cutting off limbs, digging out bullets, watching boys younger than me die screaming for their mothers. Martha's chest tightened with sympathy. "I'm sorry. After Gettysburg, something in me just broke. Couldn't stand the sight of blood anymore. Couldn't steady my hands enough to stitch a wound." His voice had dropped to a near whisper. "Came west after the war, trying to outrun the nightmares. Found I could still help people, just in a different way. As a lawman," he nodded. "Turns out I'm good at keeping the peace. And out here, that's just as important as mending bodies." Martha considered his words. "I think you would have made a fine doctor, Adam, but you make an excellent deputy as well." Something shifted in his expression, a softening around the eyes that made Martha's heart skip a beat. "Your turn," he said quietly. "Why'd you really leave Boston, Martha? And don't tell me it was for the opportunity." The question caught her off guard. She looked away, studying the dancing flames. "I told you. My parents died and I wanted a change." "That's part of it," Adam acknowledged, "but not all. Something happened to you, something that put that sadness in your eyes, something you're running from." Martha stood abruptly, moving to the window where the storm still raged. "We all have things we'd rather not discuss, Deputy." "Fair enough." His voice was closer now he had risen too. "Just know that whatever it is, it doesn't matter out here. Wickenburg's full of people starting over." Martha turned to find him standing just behind her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. Their eyes met, and something electric passed between them, a recognition, a possibility. For one breathless moment, Martha thought he might kiss her. Part of her apart she'd thought dead after Edmund's rejection wanted him to. Instead, Adam stepped back. "Storm's letting up," he observed, glancing out the window. "Should be able to get you home soon." Martha nodded, unsure whether she felt relief or disappointment. "Thank you for your hospitality. Anytime." He busied himself banking the fire. "Though maybe next time we could meet under less dusty circumstances." Martha smiled despite herself. Perhaps, by the time they reached Mrs. Peterson's boarding house, the storm had indeed abated, leaving the town coated in a fine layer of dust. Adam saw her to the door, tipping his hat with formal correctness that belied the intimacy of their afternoon. "Good night, Miss Forster," he said, his voice carrying for the benefit of anyone who might be watching. "Glad I could see you safely home." "Thank you, Deputy," Martha replied with equal formality. "Your assistance was most appreciated." Only their eyes spoke of deeper things as Adam turned and walked away into the twilight. The Thanksgiving celebration at the schoolhouse was a rousing success. Families brought dishes to share. Tables groaned under the weight of roasted turkeys and pies, and even the Yavapai families attended, bringing traditional foods that intrigued the other guests. Martha moved among them all, accepting compliments on her students' progress and deflecting questions about her personal life with practiced ease. Adam attended as well. His official presence requested to keep order, though the gathering was entirely peaceful. Martha caught him watching her several times, his expression unreadable. Since the afternoon in his cabin, a new awareness had sprung up between them, unspoken but undeniable. As the celebration wound down and families departed with sleepy children, Martha found herself alone with Adam in the schoolhouse. They worked in companionable silence, straightening benches and gathering leftover food into baskets for the poorer families. "You've done well here," Adam said, breaking the quiet. "The town's taken to you." Martha smiled, pleased by the observation. "I've taken to it as well, more than I expected to. Planning to stay then?" There was something careful in his tone, as if her answer mattered more than the casual question suggested. "I have no reason to leave," Martha replied, equally careful. Adam set down the basket he was filling and turned to face her fully. "Martha," the schoolhouse door burst open and Lily ran in, her face alight with excitement. "Deputy Adam, Pa says to tell you there's a new baby at the Wilsons. Mrs. Wilson had twins." Adam's expression shifted instantly from intensity to gentle amusement. "That's so." "Well, that's mighty fine news, Lily girl. You tell your pa I'll stop by to congratulate them tomorrow." Lily nodded vigorously, then turned to Martha. "Miss Forster, did you hear? Twins, 2 babies at once." "That's wonderful news," Martha said, though the mention of babies sent a familiar ache through her chest. "Mrs. Wilson must be very happy." "She is. Pa says she's been wanting babies forever and ever." Lily's innocent words were daggers. "Can I take this pie to my pa?" She pointed to a half-eaten apple pie on a nearby table. "Of course." Martha wrapped it carefully. "Here you are, be careful not to drop it." Lily skipped out, leaving behind a heavy silence. Martha busied herself with the remaining food, avoiding Adam's eyes. "Martha," he began. "It's getting late," she interrupted. "I should get back to the boarding house." Adam nodded slowly, his eyes searching her face. "I'll walk you." The night was clear and cold, stars blazing in the black Arizona sky. Their breath formed small clouds as they walked in silence, the basket of leftover food swinging from Adam's hand. Martha hugged herself against the chill, lost in thoughts she couldn't share. "You went quiet back there," Adam observed as they neared the boarding house. When Lily mentioned the twins, Martha kept her eyes on the path. "Did I? I'm just tired. It was a long day, Martha." Adam stopped, forcing her to stop as well. "I've watched you these past months. You're kind to everyone, but something happens when children are mentioned. Something sad comes into your eyes." Martha felt cold that had nothing to do with the November night. "You're imagining things." "I don't think so." He set the basket down and turned to face her fully. "Whatever it is, you can tell me. I won't judge." For a moment, Martha was so tempted to unburden herself, to speak the words that had become a weight around her heart. But the memory of Edmund's face when she told him the mixture of pity and revulsion stopped her. "There's nothing to tell," she said firmly. "Now, if you'll excuse me, it's late." Adam studied her face for a long moment, then nodded once. "All right, for now." He picked up the basket and handed it to her. "Good night, Martha." "Good night, Deputy." She turned away quickly, not wanting him to see the tears that threatened. She didn't look back, though she felt his eyes following her until the boarding house door closed behind her. Winter settled over Wickenburg, bringing crisp mornings and occasional light snowfall that delighted the children. Christmas approached, and with it, a flurry of preparations for the school pageant. Martha threw herself into rehearsals, costume making, and decoration planning, working from dawn until well after dusk most days. Adam continued his daily visits to the schoolhouse, though a new formality had crept into their interactions. Martha maintained a polite distance, afraid of the feelings that threatened to develop despite her best intentions. She had come to Wickenburg to escape the expectations of marriage and family, not to fall into the same trap in a new location. And yet, she couldn't deny the warmth that spread through her whenever Adam entered a room, or the way her pulse quickened when their hands accidentally touched. It was foolish, she knew. Even if she allowed herself to care for him, the truth of her condition would eventually come between them, just as it had with Edmund. 3 days before Christmas, Martha stayed late at the schoolhouse, finishing the angel costumes for the pageant. Snow had begun to fall, soft flakes drifting past the windows in the early dusk. She was so absorbed in her sewing that she didn't hear the door open. "Working yourself to exhaustion again," Martha started, pricking her finger. A drop of blood welled up, bright against her skin. "Adam." "You startled me. Sorry." He crossed to her desk, concern in his eyes. "You're bleeding." "It's nothing." Martha sucked the injured finger, tasting copper. "Just a prick." Adam reached into his pocket, producing a clean handkerchief. "Here, let me." Before she could protest, he had taken her hand in his, wrapping the handkerchief gently around her finger. His touch was warm, his large hands surprisingly gentle. Martha found herself unable to look away from his face, so intent on this small task. "There." He finished, but didn't release her hand. "You should be more careful." "I was in a hurry." Martha's voice sounded strange to her own ears. "The pageant is in 2 days, and I still have 5 costumes to finish. You need help." Adam glanced at the pile of white fabric. "I'm no seamstress, but I can cut patterns or whatever else you need." Martha tried to summon a polite refusal but found herself nodding instead. "That would be helpful, thank you." For the next hour they worked side by side in companionable silence. Adam proved surprisingly deft with scissors, cutting the angel wings Martha had traced on paper. She sewed them together, stuffing them with cotton batting before attaching ribbons to secure them to the children's shoulders. "You're good at this," Adam observed as she finished another pair. "Making something beautiful out of scraps. My mother taught me," Martha replied, not looking up from her work. She believed every girl should know how to sew, cook, and keep accounts, practical skills for a practical world. Wise woman. Adam set aside the scissors. "What would she think of you now? Teaching on the frontier?" Martha considered the question. "She would be concerned for my safety, I think, but proud that I'm independent." She tied off a thread. "She always said I was too stubborn for my own good." "Stubborn isn't always bad." Adam leaned back in his chair, studying her. "Sometimes it's the only thing that keeps a person going when sense says to give up." Martha glanced up, meeting his eyes. "Is that what kept you going, after the war? That and spite?" A corner of his mouth lifted. "Wasn't going to let those rebels have the satisfaction of breaking me completely." "And now," Martha asked softly, "what keeps you going now?" Adam's gaze intensified. "Different things. The job, friends." He paused. "Possibilities." The word hung between them, laden with meaning. Martha looked away first, her heart hammering. "It's getting late. I should get back before Mrs. Peterson sends out a search party." "Martha." Adam's voice stopped her as she gathered her things. "I've been meaning to ask you something." She stilled, suddenly nervous. "Yes." "There's a New Year's dance at the town hall. Would you consider attending?" "With me?" The invitation was so unexpected that Martha found herself speechless. Adam watched her, something vulnerable in his expression. "As friends," he added when she didn't respond. "No pressure, just—" "I'd like to start the new year with you." Martha should have refused. It would be the sensible thing to do to maintain the distance she had so carefully established. But looking at Adam's face, open and hopeful in the lamplight, she found she couldn't. "Yes," she said simply. "I'd like that." The smile that spread across his face was like sunrise breaking over the desert. "Good, that's good." They walked to the boarding house through gently falling snow, a new awareness humming between them like an unplayed melody. At the gate, Adam hesitated. "Martha, I know you're carrying something heavy." His voice was soft in the snowy quiet. "Whatever it is, it doesn't change who you are to me." Martha's throat tightened. "You don't know that. I do." He reached out, his gloved hand brushing a snowflake from her cheek. "Some things just are, no matter what came before." Before she could respond, he was gone, his broad figure disappearing into the swirling snow. Martha stood at the gate long after he'd vanished, her cheek burning where he had touched it, her heart torn between hope and fear. The Christmas pageant was a triumph. Every child performed flawlessly, every costume stayed in place, and the audience of parents and townspeople applauded enthusiastically. Martha accepted congratulations with gracious smiles, though her eyes frequently strayed to where Adam stood at the back of the room, tall and solid in his best suit. Christmas Day itself was quiet. Martha attended church services, then joined the Peterson household for dinner. She had received a few small gifts, handkerchiefs from the elderly sisters, a book of poetry from Mrs. Peterson, handmade trinkets from her students. But it was the package waiting on her bed when she returned to her room that caught her breath. It was wrapped in brown paper and string, with no card. Inside, Martha found a beautiful leather-bound journal, its pages creamy and blank, waiting for words. A small note was tucked into the first page. "For new beginnings." Martha traced the embossed cover, something unfurling in her chest like a flower opening to the sun. She had given Adam a gift as well, a knitted scarf in deep blue that matched his eyes, but this thoughtful present touched her in unexpected ways. That night, she wrote in the journal for the first time, pouring out thoughts she had kept locked away for too long. About Edmund's rejection, about the doctor's cold words, about her fears for the future. The act of writing was cathartic, releasing some of the pressure that had built inside her since leaving Boston. As she wrote, Martha realized something startling. She was happy in Wickenburg. Despite the hardships, despite the lingering sadness of her condition, she had found purpose here. She had made a difference in children's lives. She had created a place for herself. And perhaps, just perhaps, she had found someone who saw her as more than a vessel for continuing a family line. The week between Christmas and New Year's passed in a flurry of social calls and preparations for the spring term. Martha saw Adam only in passing, their interactions brief, but charged with anticipation of the coming dance. New Year's Eve arrived clear and cold, stars sprinkled like diamond dust across the velvet sky. Martha dressed with unusual care, selecting her best gown, a deep burgundy that she had packed but never worn in Wickenburg. It was more fashionable than practical, with a fitted bodice and full skirt that rustled pleasingly when she moved. Mrs. Peterson helped her arrange her hair, coiling it at the nape of her neck, with a few artful curls framing her face. "You look beautiful," the older woman said, stepping back to admire her work. "Deputy Kavanaugh won't know what hit him." Martha felt her cheeks warm. "We're just friends, Mrs. Peterson. Hum." The landlady's knowing smile suggested she believed otherwise. "Friends don't look at each other the way he looks at you, my dear." Before Martha could formulate a response, a knock sounded at the front door. Her heart leapt, then steadied as she took a calming breath. It was just an evening of dancing with a friend, she reminded herself. Nothing more. But when she descended the stairs to find Adam waiting in the parlor, all rational thought fled. He wore a black suit that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, a crisp white shirt, and a string tie. His hair was neatly combed, his beard trimmed. He looked magnificent. and the way his eyes widened when he saw her made Martha feel truly beautiful for the first time in months. "Martha." He stepped forward, offering his arm. "You look. There aren't words. Thank you." She placed her hand on his arm, feeling the solid muscle beneath the fabric. "You're quite handsome yourself." Mrs. Peterson bustled around them, holding Martha's shawl. "Now, you young people enjoy yourselves. Don't worry about the time it's New Year's Eve, after all." The walk to the town hall was magical. Lanterns had been strung along the main street, casting golden light on the freshly fallen snow. Other couples and families made their way toward the same destination, calling greetings as they passed. "I've never seen Wickenburg look so festive," Martha observed, her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. "Town cleans up nice when it has a reason." Adam glanced down at her, his eyes warm. "Kind of like its deputy." Martha laughed, the sound bright in the winter night. "I wouldn't say you needed much cleaning up, Deputy Kavanaugh. You didn't see me after tracking those rustlers last month," he replied with a grin. "Pretty sure I had half the desert in my beard." Their easy banter continued as they reached the town hall, which had been transformed with garlands, ribbons, and more lanterns. A small band played in one corner, and couples already swirled across the makeshift dance floor. Tables laden with food and punch lined one wall, while chairs provided resting places for those not dancing. Martha found herself greeted warmly by parents of her students, by merchants who knew her from her shopping, by women who had included her in their sewing circles. For the first time, she felt truly part of the community, not just the schoolteacher from Boston, but Martha Forster of Wickenburg. "Dance with me," Adam said as the band struck up a waltz. He held out his hand, his expression a mixture of hope and uncertainty that touched Martha deeply. "I'd be delighted," she replied, placing her hand in his. Adam led her onto the dance floor, one arm circling her waist as the other clasped her hand. He moved with surprising grace for such a large man, guiding her through the steps with confident ease. "You dance well," Martha said, looking up at him with new appreciation. "My mother insisted all her sons learn," Adam replied. "Said a man who could dance would never lack for female company." Wise woman, she was. His expression softened with memory. "She'd have liked you." Strong-minded women always got along with her. The implication that he had thought about how his mother would view her wasn't lost on Martha. They were moving into dangerous territory, yet she couldn't bring herself to step back. They danced through 3 more songs before taking a break for punch and conversation. Adam kept her hand tucked in the crook of his arm as they circulated through the crowd, a subtle statement of possession that both thrilled and terrified Martha. As midnight approached, the mayor called for attention, proposing a toast to the coming year. Glasses were raised, wishes for prosperity and health exchanged. The band began counting down the final seconds of 1873. 10, 9, 8, Adam turned to Martha, something unspoken in his eyes. 7, 6, 5, Martha, he said, his voice barely audible above the counting. "There's something I need to tell you. 4, 3, 2. "What is it?" Martha asked, her heart thundering. 1, Happy New Year. Cheers erupted around them as 1874 arrived in Wickenburg. Couples embraced, friends clapped each other on the back, and the band struck up Auld Lang Syne. In the midst of the celebration, Adam leaned down, his lips close to Martha's ear. "I think I'm falling in love with you," he said simply. Martha froze, joy and panic warring within her. Before she could respond, he straightened, his expression carefully neutral. "You don't have to say anything," he continued quietly. "I just wanted you to know, whatever happens, whatever you decide, that's the truth of it." Martha stared up at him, words failing her. She wanted to tell him that she felt the same, that he had awakened feelings she thought were dead, that she dreamed of him at night. But she also needed to tell him the truth, the damning truth that had cost her Edmund and would likely cost her Adam as well. "Adam, she began. "Deputy." A voice cut through the crowd. The sheriff pushed his way toward them, his expression grim. "Need you now. Wilson Place is on fire." Adam's demeanor changed instantly, the tender suitor replaced by the efficient lawman. "How bad?" "Bad enough. Got the family out, but it's spreading fast. Could take half the town if the wind shifts." Adam nodded once, then turned back to Martha. "I have to go." "Of course," she said, trying to hide her disappointment. "Be careful." He hesitated for a fraction of a second, then bent swiftly and pressed his lips to hers, a brief, fierce kiss that left her breathless. "We'll finish this conversation later," he promised, then turned and disappeared into the crowd, following the sheriff. Martha stood in the middle of the celebrating throng, her fingers touching her lips where Adam's had been. The kiss had lasted only a moment, but it had changed everything. The Wilson fire consumed not only their home but 3 adjacent buildings before it was finally extinguished. The entire town turned out to help, forming bucket brigades from the nearest well, pulling valuables from threatened structures, comforting those displaced. Martha worked alongside other women, providing food and blankets for the exhausted firefighters and care for the affected families. She caught glimpses of Adam throughout the night, his tall figure silhouetted against the flames as he directed men, carried children from danger, hauled water. His face was streaked with soot, his fine suit ruined, yet he worked tirelessly until dawn broke and the last ember was extinguished. By morning, the town was quiet, the celebration of New Year forgotten in the aftermath of tragedy. Martha, exhausted but unable to rest, found herself walking through the charred remains of the Wilson home, searching for salvageable items for the family. "You should be sleeping." She turned to find Adam behind her, his face gray with fatigue, his eyes bloodshot from smoke. "So should you," she replied. "Sheriff's orders said I'd been up 36 hours straight." He rubbed a hand over his beard, leaving another streak of soot. "Wanted to check on the Wilsons first. They're at the church with their babies. Mrs. Peterson is organizing care packages." Martha moved closer, concerned by his exhaustion. "Adam, you need rest. So do you." He looked around at the devastation. "Hellish way to start a new year." "But no lives lost," Martha reminded him. "That's something to be thankful for." Adam nodded, swaying slightly on his feet. Martha made a quick decision, taking his arm. "Come. You're dead on your feet. My boarding house is closer than your cabin." He didn't resist as she led him through the quiet streets. Mrs. Peterson, seeing his condition, immediately set about preparing coffee and a wash basin, clucking sympathetically over his ruined clothing. "You sit right there, Deputy," she ordered, pointing to a kitchen chair. "Miss Forster, get him cleaned up while I fix something to eat." Man needs food after a night like that. Martha dampened a cloth and approached Adam, who sat where directed, his broad shoulders slumped with fatigue. Gently, she began wiping the soot from his face. "You were brave tonight," she said softly. "The whole town's talking about how you saved the Wilson twins." "Just doing my job." His eyes were half closed as she worked, her touch seeming to soothe him. "Martha, about what I said before, SHH. She laid a finger against his lips. "We'll talk when you're rested." "Nothing needs to be decided right now." He caught her hand, pressing a kiss to her palm. "Just don't want you thinking I didn't mean it. I did. Every word." Martha's heart twisted. "I know." Mrs. Peterson bustled back in with a tray of food, effectively ending the intimate moment. Adam ate mechanically, clearly forcing himself to finish despite his exhaustion. When he had finished, Martha insisted on walking him to his cabin. "I can make it," he protested weakly. "I'm sure you can," Martha replied, "but humor me." The January morning was crisp and clear, the town quiet after the night's excitement. They walked in silence, Adam's steps growing heavier as fatigue caught up with him. By the time they reached his cabin, he was leaning heavily on Martha's arm. Inside, she helped him to the bed where he sank down with a groan. "Thank you," he murmured, his eyes already closing, "for everything." Martha removed his boots, covered him with a blanket, and built up the fire to keep him warm. As she turned to leave, his hand caught hers. "Stay," he whispered, his eyes still closed. "Just until I fall asleep." She should have refused, but something in his vulnerability, in the simple need for comfort after a night of heroism, broke through her defenses. Martha sat on the edge of the bed, holding his hand as his breathing deepened into sleep. "I think I'm falling in love with you too," she whispered to his sleeping form, "and that terrifies me more than any fire." The next day, Martha returned to Adam's cabin, bringing a pot of Mrs. Peterson's chicken soup and bread still warm from the oven. She found him awake, shaved and dressed in clean clothing, though shadows of exhaustion still lingered under his eyes. "You didn't have to bring food," he said, though his smile of welcome belied the words. Mrs. Peterson insisted. Martha set the basket on his table. "She says you need feeding up after your heroics." "Just doing my job," Adam repeated his words from earlier. "Though I won't turn down her soup, best in the territory." They ate together, discussing the fire and its aftermath. The Wilsons would rebuild with the town's help. Insurance would cover some costs, and a collection was being taken for the rest. Normal life in Wickenburg would resume, as it always did after disaster. When the meal was finished and the dishes washed, they sat before the fire, the moment of reckoning no longer avoidable. Adam spoke first. "I meant what I said last night, Martha. I'm falling in love with you, maybe already have." His voice was steady, his eyes fixed on hers. "I know we haven't known each other that long, but out here, time works differently. Life's too uncertain to waste it pretending." Martha's hands twisted in her lap. "Adam, there's something you need to know about me, something important." He waited, patient and still, as she gathered her courage. "I can't have children," she said finally, the words falling like stones into the quiet room. "There was a childhood illness. It damaged me, inside." She couldn't meet his eyes. "The doctor in Boston was quite certain. That's why I left, really. My fiancé broke our engagement when he found out. He said," her voice caught, "he said he couldn't marry a woman who couldn't give him sons." The silence that followed seemed endless. Martha stared at her hands, waiting for the familiar mixture of pity and disappointment that had been Edmund's response. Instead, she felt Adam's large hand cover both of hers. "Martha, look at me." Reluctantly, she raised her eyes to his face. What she saw there wasn't pity or revulsion, but tenderness and something deeper, something that stole her breath. "You already have my heart," he said simply. "Children or no children, that doesn't change." Martha stared at him, unable to believe what she was hearing. "But don't you want a family? Don't all men want sons to carry on their name?" Adam's smile was tinged with sadness. "Martha, I've seen enough death to last several lifetimes. I've buried more friends than I care to count. What I want isn't sons to carry my name, it's love while I'm still here to feel it." He squeezed her hands gently. "Besides, there are plenty of children who need homes. Orphans from Indian raids, from disease, from accidents. If we decided we wanted a family, we could give a home to children who need one." Martha's heart thundered in her chest. Adam's eyes crinkled. "Getting ahead of myself, I know, but yes, if you'll have me." "Adam, I don't know what to say." "Say you'll think about it." He released her hands. "I'm not asking for an answer today, just don't shut the door on us because of what some doctor told you. Your worth isn't measured in children you can bear, Martha. It's in who you are. Tears filled Martha's eyes, spilling down her cheeks before she could stop them. Adam reached out, brushing them away with his thumb. "I didn't mean to make you cry," he said softly. "Happy tears," Martha assured him, covering his hand with hers. "I never thought, after Edmund, I never thought any man would want me knowing the truth." "Edmund sounds like a fool," Adam said firmly. "His loss is my gain." Martha laughed through her tears, feeling as if a great weight had been lifted from her shoulders. "I need time, Adam, to be sure. This all feels so sudden." "Take all the time you need." He leaned forward, pressing a gentle kiss to her forehead. "I'm not going anywhere." As January gave way to February, Martha and Adam's courtship progressed with careful deliberation. They were seen together frequently at church, at community events, taking Sunday afternoon walks along the river. The town watched with approving eyes, speculation about a spring wedding already circulating among the gossips. Martha found herself opening to the possibility of a future with Adam in a way she had never expected. His acceptance of her condition, not merely tolerance but genuine acceptance, had healed something broken inside her. For the first time since Dr. Warren's devastating diagnosis, she could imagine happiness that didn't depend on her ability to bear children. Valentine's Day brought a small gift from Adam, a silver locket containing a pressed desert flower. "Something that blooms in unlikely places," he explained as he fastened it around her neck. "Reminded me of you." Martha thanked him with a kiss, no longer self-conscious about showing affection. They had established boundaries always in public, or with Mrs. Peterson's benevolent chaperoning, but within those boundaries, they allowed themselves to express the growing love between them. As February waned, however, a shadow fell across their budding happiness. Reports of Apache raids to the north grew more frequent, and Adam was often called away to help track renegades or escort settlers to safety. Each time he rode out, Martha faced the fear that he might not return. "It's part of being with a lawman, Mrs. Peterson advised when Martha confided her worries. "You learn to live with fear as a constant companion, but you don't let it rule you." Martha tried to follow this wise counsel, focusing on her teaching and her students rather than the dangers Adam might be facing. But the nights were long, filled with vivid dreams of loss and abandonment. In early March, a late winter storm swept through the territory, bringing heavy snow and bitter winds. School was canceled for 3 days as families huddled indoors, conserving fuel and food. Martha had not seen Adam for nearly a week. He had ridden out with the sheriff to investigate reports of cattle rustling before the storm hit. On the 3rd day, as the storm began to abate, a knock came at the boarding house door. Martha, who had been reading by the fire, looked up with hope that quickly turned to dread as Mrs. Peterson ushered in Sheriff Dawson, his expression grave. "Miss Forster," he said, removing his snow-crusted hat. "Got some news about Deputy Kavanaugh." Martha's world narrowed to the sheriff's weathered face, everything else falling away. "Is he?" She couldn't finish the question. "He's alive," the sheriff said quickly, seeing her distress. "But injured. Party of rustlers ambushed us near the Superstition Mountains." "Adam took a bullet in the shoulder, lost a fair amount of blood before we could get him to shelter." "Where is he?" Martha was already on her feet, reaching for her shawl. "Over at Doc Wilson's place. He's stable, but Doc says the shoulder's pretty torn up. Might affect his ability to use that arm proper." The sheriff hesitated. "He's been asking for you, figured you'd want to know straight away." "Thank you." Martha's voice was remarkably steady despite the fear clutching at her heart. "I'll go to him now." "I'll come with you, Mrs. Peterson declared, already wrapping herself in a heavy coat. Man needs familiar faces when he's hurting. The walk to the doctor's home was difficult, snow still deep on the ground and wind cutting through their clothing. Martha barely noticed, her mind fixed on Adam injured, possibly permanently impaired, asking for her. Dr. Wilson's house doubled as his surgery, with a separate entrance for patients. The sheriff led them through this door into a small waiting room, where he spoke briefly with the doctor's wife before she ushered them into a back room. Adam lay on a narrow bed, his face pale against the white pillowcase, his left shoulder heavily bandaged. His eyes were closed, his breathing shallow but even. Martha approached quietly, her heart constricting at the sight of him so vulnerable. "Adam," she said softly, taking his right hand in hers. His eyes fluttered open, focusing slowly on her face. "Martha," a smile touched his lips. "Knew you'd come. Of course I came." She stroked his forehead, brushing back a lock of sandy hair. "How are you feeling? Like I've been kicked by a mule." He attempted a chuckle that turned into a grimace of pain. "Doc says the bullet went clean through, but it tore up some muscle. Might not have full use of the arm again." Martha squeezed his hand. "We'll face that together if it happens." Something flickered in Adam's eyes, hope, mixed with uncertainty. "Martha, I need to ask you something. Might not be the right time, but getting shot puts things in perspective." "What is it?" she asked, though she suspected she knew. "If this arm doesn't heal right, I can't be a deputy anymore. Might not be able to do a lot of things I used to." His gaze was steady despite his pain. "Would change things for us. Need to know if you're still in, even if I'm less than I was." Martha's throat tightened with emotion. "Adam Kavanaugh, you think my feelings for you depend on your ability to wear a badge or use both arms perfectly?" "No," he admitted. "But a man worries." Martha leaned down, pressing her lips to his in a gentle kiss. "I love you," she said against his mouth. "All of you. Whatever comes, we face it together." Adam's good arm came up, his hand cradling the back of her neck as he returned her kiss with surprising strength for a man in his condition. When they parted, his eyes were suspiciously bright. "Marry me," he said simply. "Soon as I'm on my feet again." Martha's answer was another kiss, this one witnessed by Mrs. Peterson and the doctor's wife, who exchanged knowing smiles in the doorway. Adam's recovery was slower than he would have liked, but steadier than the doctor had predicted. By mid-April, he was up and moving, though his left arm remained in a sling. The damage to his shoulder would indeed be permanent. He would never again have full range of motion or the strength required for certain tasks. The sheriff, unwilling to lose his best deputy, offered him a different role, training new deputies and handling administrative duties at the office. It wasn't the active law enforcement Adam had loved, but it was a way to continue serving the community he had come to call home. "Could be worse," he told Martha as they walked along the river one mild spring afternoon. "Could have been my shooting arm." Martha smiled, tucking her hand into the crook of his good arm, always finding the silver lining. "Learned that in the war," Adam replied. "You either find reasons to be grateful or you go mad dwelling on what you've lost." They had set their wedding date for early June, when the desert would be ablaze with spring flowers. Martha had written to her few remaining friends in Boston, inviting them to the ceremony, though she doubted any would make the journey. Adam's brother had replied to his letter with enthusiastic acceptance, promising to arrive a week before the wedding. The town had embraced their engagement wholeheartedly. Martha's students presented her with a handmade quilt, each child contributing a square. The ladies' sewing circle was creating her wedding dress. Mrs. Peterson had insisted on hosting the reception at the boarding house. "Never seen two people more meant for each other," the landlady declared. "Warms my old heart to see love triumph over adversity." As May bloomed across the desert, Martha found herself happier than she had ever imagined possible. The shadow of her condition, once so all-consuming, had receded to an occasional twinge of sadness, quickly balanced by Adam's unwavering love and acceptance. One evening, as they sat on the porch of what would soon be their home, a small but sturdy house on the edge of town that Adam had purchased with his savings, Martha broached a subject that had been on her mind. "Adam, I've been thinking about what you said, about children who need homes." He turned to her, his expression curious but open. "What about it? There's a girl at the mission school, Mary. She's 8, orphaned in a raid 2 years ago. The nuns say she's bright but withdrawn. No one wants to adopt her because she's half Apache." Martha hesitated. "I was thinking, perhaps we could visit her, see if we might be a good fit for each other." Adam was silent for a long moment, his face unreadable in the gathering dusk. Then he reached for her hand, squeezing it gently. "Martha Forster, almost Kavanaugh, you continue to amaze me." His voice was thick with emotion. "Yes, I think that's a fine idea, a very fine idea indeed." "It won't be easy," Martha warned. "The town may not approve of us taking in an Apache child." Adam's jaw set in a now familiar expression of determination. "The town will come around. And if they don't, they can keep their opinions to themselves. Family is family, no matter how it comes together." Martha leaned against his good shoulder, content in a way she had never expected to be. "I love you, Adam Kavanaugh, and I love you, soon to be Mrs. Kavanaugh." He pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "With all my heart." June 5, 1874 dawned clear and bright, the kind of perfect day that seemed designed for beginnings. Martha stood in her room at the boarding house, allowing Mrs. Peterson and the elderly sisters to fuss over her wedding dress, a creation of ivory silk with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs, far more elegant than she had expected from frontier seamstresses. "You look beautiful, dear," Mrs. Peterson said, adjusting the simple veil. "Absolutely radiant." Martha smiled, touching the silver locket at her throat, Adam's Valentine's gift, which she had chosen as her something old. "I feel radiant, and nervous, and excited, all at once." "As every bride should," one of the sisters assured her. "Now, let's get you to the church before the groom thinks you've changed your mind." The church had been transformed with wildflowers and ribbons, the pews filled with nearly every resident of Wickenburg. As Martha entered on Sheriff Dawson's arm, he had offered to give her away in the absence of her father. She saw Adam waiting at the altar, his face lighting with such joy that tears sprang to her eyes. He wore a new black suit, his left arm no longer in a sling, though he still held it carefully. Beside him stood his brother, Charles, who had arrived from California the week before, and charmed the entire town with his easy manner and obvious affection for Adam. The ceremony itself passed in a blur of emotion. Martha remembered the warmth of Adam's hand as he took hers, the depth of his voice as he repeated his vows, the gentle way he kissed her when the minister pronounced them man and wife. She remembered the cheers of the congregation, the rice thrown as they exited the church, the music and laughter at the reception. But most clearly, she remembered the moment they entered their new home as husband and wife, the sunset painting the walls golden through freshly hung curtains. "Welcome home, Mrs. Kavanaugh," Adam said, his voice husky with emotion as he lifted her across the threshold despite his injured shoulder. "Careful," Martha protested, though she wrapped her arms around his neck. "Your arm is strong enough to carry my wife," he assured her, setting her down gently in the center of their small parlor. "Besides, some traditions are worth a little pain." Martha reached up, framing his face with her hands. "I never thought I would be this happy," she confessed. "After the doctor's diagnosis, I thought my life was over in all the ways that mattered." Adam turned his head, pressing a kiss to her palm. "And now Now I know it was just beginning." She stretched up on tiptoe, her lips finding his in a kiss that held all the promise of their future together. "You gave me back my heart, Adam. You made me whole again." "That goes both ways," he murmured against her mouth. "You saved me too, Martha, from loneliness, from the ghosts of the past." He pulled back slightly, his eyes serious. "We're going to have a good life. It won't always be easy, but it will be ours." "Ours," Martha repeated, the word tasting of hope and possibility. "I like the sound of that." 3 weeks later, they journeyed to the mission school, where they met Mary, a solemn-faced child with dark eyes that held too much knowledge of suffering for one so young. She regarded them warily at first, answering their gentle questions with monosyllables, her thin shoulders rigid with tension. But when Martha mentioned that she taught school in Wickenburg, something flickered in the girl's expression. "I like to read," she said, the first voluntary information she had offered. "Sister Agnes says I read better than any student she's had." "Is that so?" Adam leaned forward, his smile warm. "I'm a reader myself, got shelves full of books back home, everything from Shakespeare to dime novels." Mary's eyes widened slightly. "What's Shakespeare?" "Tell you what," Adam said, his voice conspirators. "If you come visit us in Wickenburg, I'll show you. Got a whole collection of his plays. They're full of sword fights and ghosts and star-crossed lovers." "What's star-crossed?" Mary asked, curiosity beginning to overcome caution. "Means the stars are against them," Martha explained. "But they love each other anyway. Do they die?" Mary's directness was startling. "Some of them," Adam admitted, "but not all. Some of them get happy endings." Mary considered this. "I'd like to read about the ones with happy endings." Martha exchanged a glance with Adam, hope blossoming in her chest. "We have plenty of those too," she assured the child. "And we'd very much like to share them with you, if you're willing." The nuns agreed to a trial visit. Mary would spend 2 weeks with the Kavanaughs, after which all parties would decide if a permanent arrangement was desirable. As they prepared to leave, Sister Agnes drew Martha aside. "She's had a difficult life," the nun said quietly. "Saw her mother killed, father unknown. She doesn't trust easily and she has nightmares." "We understand," Martha assured her. "We're prepared for challenges." Sister Agnes studied her face, then nodded. "I believe you are. God works in mysterious ways, bringing together those who need each other." As they journeyed back to Wickenburg, Mary sitting between them in the wagon, Martha felt a sense of rightness that transcended her earlier happiness. This child, wary, wounded, but with a spark of resilience that refused to be extinguished, belonged with them. Somehow, she knew it as surely as she knew her own name. The town's reaction to Mary's arrival was mixed. Some, like Mrs. Peterson, welcomed her with open arms and freshly baked cookies. Others were politely reserved, withholding judgment until they saw how things developed. A few were openly disapproving, their whispers following Martha as she walked Mary to school, bringing Indian blood into a respectable home, asking for trouble. Girls got the look of a wildcat. "Mark my words, she'll turn on them." Martha held her head high, her hand firmly clasping Mary's. Adam, for his part, made it clear that anyone who had a problem with his family should take it up with him directly, a challenge few were brave enough to accept. Mary herself remained cautious, watching her new surroundings with the wariness of a child who had learned early that security could be snatched away in an instant. She followed rules meticulously, spoke only when spoken to, and kept her few possessions packed in the small bag she had brought from the mission. "She's waiting for us to send her back," Martha observed to Adam one night after Mary had gone to bed. "She doesn't believe this is permanent." "Can't blame her," Adam replied, his expression somber. "Life's taught her not to trust happiness." He took Martha's hand, his thumb tracing circles on her palm. "We just have to keep showing her day by day that we're not going anywhere." The turning point came during Mary's second week with them. Martha awoke in the night to muffled cries from the small bedroom across the hall. She found Mary thrashing in the grip of a nightmare, tears streaming down her face as she called for her mother in a mixture of English and Apache. "Mary, sweetheart, wake up," Martha urged, sitting on the edge of the bed and gently shaking the child's shoulder. "It's just a dream. You're safe." Mary's eyes flew open, wild with terror for a moment before focusing on Martha's face. "Miss Martha." "I'm here," Martha soothed, brushing damp hair from the child's forehead. "You were having a bad dream." Mary's face crumpled. "I saw them again. The men who killed my mother, they were coming for me too." Martha gathered the trembling child into her arms, rocking her gently. "It was just a dream. No one is coming for you. You're safe here with us." "But what if they do come?" Mary whispered against Martha's shoulder. "What if they find me?" "Then they'd have to go through me and Deputy Adam," Martha said firmly. "And we're both quite formidable." Mary pulled back slightly, her tear-stained face serious. "Promise." "I promise." Martha met her eyes steadily. "Mary, I want you to know something. Adam and we want you to stay with us, not just for a visit, but forever, if that's what you want too." Hope and fear warred in the child's expression. Like a real family, exactly like a real family, because that's what we would be. Martha stroked her hair. "You don't have to decide right now. Just know that we care for you very much, and our home is your home for as long as you want it to be." Mary was quiet for a long moment, then asked in a small voice, "Could I call you Ma? Not now, but someday when I'm ready." Martha's heart swelled with a love so intense it nearly took her breath away. "Whenever you're ready, sweetheart, I'd be honored." From that night forward, something shifted in their household. Mary began to unpack her bag, arranging her few possessions on the shelf Adam had built for her. She spoke more freely, asking questions about Wickenburg, about Adam's work, about Martha's teaching. She even began to smile tentatively at first, then with increasing frequency. When the 2 weeks ended, there was no question of Mary returning to the mission school. The nuns, seeing the change in the once withdrawn child, gladly signed the adoption papers Adam had prepared. Mary Kavanaugh became officially part of their family on a bright July morning, with Sheriff Dawson and Mrs. Peterson serving as witnesses. "Never thought I'd be a father," Adam confided to Martha that night, as they sat on their porch watching the stars emerge. Mary had gone to bed earlier, clutching a copy of Romeo and Juliet that Adam had promised to read with her. "Especially not to a half-Apache girl with more courage than most grown men I know." "Life takes unexpected turns," Martha replied, leaning against his good shoulder. "A year ago I was leaving Boston, convinced I'd never have a family of my own. Now look at us." Adam pressed a kiss to the top of her head. "Happiest wrong prediction you ever made." They sat in comfortable silence, the night sounds of Wickenburg washing over them, distant piano music from the saloon, the occasional whinny of a horse, the soft hooting of an owl in the cottonwood tree behind their house. "I've been thinking," Adam said eventually, "about the future. About what else we might do." "Oh," Martha glanced up at him, curious. "There are other children like Mary, orphaned, mixed blood, no place to really belong." His face was thoughtful in the dim light. "This house has room for 1 or 2 more. And between your teaching and my new position, we could provide." Martha's breath caught. "You want to adopt more children?" "If you do," Adam replied. "Thought maybe we could give Mary some siblings, create the kind of family neither of us had growing up." Martha considered the idea, warmth spreading through her chest. "I think that's a wonderful plan. Not right away. Mary needs time to feel secure as our daughter, but yes, I would love to give other children a home." Adam's arm tightened around her shoulders. "You're an amazing woman, Martha Kavanaugh. Don't know what I did to deserve you, but I'm grateful every day." "We deserve each other," Martha corrected, turning to press a kiss to his beard-roughened cheek. Two people who found each other at exactly the right time. As they sat together under the vast Arizona sky, Martha reflected on the journey that had brought her to this moment. The devastation of the doctor's diagnosis, the humiliation of Edmund's rejection, the fear and uncertainty of traveling west alone, all paths leading, ultimately, to Adam, to Mary, to a family formed not by blood but by choice and love. "I can't have children," she had told Adam all those months ago, expecting the words to end whatever was growing between them. "You already have my heart," he had replied, changing everything. And now, against all odds, she had a family too. Not the one she had once envisioned, but one infinitely more precious for being unexpected. One built on understanding, acceptance, and the belief that love, in its purest form, transcended all limitations. As stars wheeled overhead and crickets sang in the desert night, Martha Kavanaugh closed her eyes and gave thanks for second chances, for new beginnings, and for the cowboy who had shown her that family could be defined by the heart rather than the body. In the years that followed, the Kavanaugh family grew. 2 years after Mary's adoption, they welcomed James, a 4-year-old orphaned in a stagecoach accident, and later, twin girls whose mother had died in childbirth and whose father couldn't care for them alone. Martha continued teaching, eventually becoming the headmistress of Wickenburg's expanded school. Adam's administrative role with the sheriff's office evolved into a position as town magistrate, his thoughtful justice earning him respect throughout the territory. Mary, their first and in some ways most special child, grew into a young woman of remarkable intelligence and compassion. She followed in Martha's footsteps, becoming a teacher herself, and eventually founding a school specifically for children of mixed heritage who found themselves caught between worlds. And through it all, the joys and sorrows, the triumphs and challenges, Martha and Adam's love remained the cornerstone of their family, a love born in the vast openness of the Arizona desert, where a woman fleeing heartbreak and a man nursing old wounds had found in each other the healing they both so desperately needed.